crazy audience tonight. Our guest is Julie Sando.
You know, when polled, you were picked as the favorite guest of all time.
It was actually just the three of us voted.
I'll take it.
But you won.
Yeah,
It doesn't
good.
matter. Instructor at the University of Windsor.
Yeah, I teach visual culture and design.
Yes.
Yes.
We're going to discuss some Batman. We did a couple different books.
Yes, we did.
We shot one back. We did like a backwards boogaloo.
We went back to the 1950s for our first segment. We were reading a book called Batman the Black Casebook. This is a collection of stories that directly inspired Grant Morrison's run on Batman. And basically what's happened is there's a lot of really kooky stories from the 1950s that modern writers want to ignore because they're so out of character for the modern Batman. And what Grant Morrison did was he decided, I'm going to figure out a way to make all these stories relevant.
Okay, so Julie, let me ask you this. Like, considering the stories are like 60 years old, do you think the stories are more like made for kids, or do they have any relevance whatsoever? And the art and everything, does it have any relevance to today?
I think the staying power of Batman is that it's always trying to be relevant for its time. So I was very aware that this was the 50s, that space travel, obviously theme rockets, alternate realities, so typical kind of science fiction themes, which I like science fiction anyway, so I was kind of geeked about the Planet X. Mm-hmm. Who doesn't like science fiction?
So George, let me ask you this. what's the difference between that art and the modern day art? Relevance to the story?
Well, like you were saying, it's very, it's the 50s when you look at that artwork.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's so brilliant, so beautiful. It has set that artists now are trying to mimic that. You can't get that same look. And I don't mean to be rude in saying this, but it's something about it. It's sort of like the torpedo bra that women used to wear. Like, those just don't exist anymore. Something about that time period, there was a style and a fashion going on, and it was, it's incredible. I'm wrapped into these stories. They're terrible by today's standards. The storytelling is awful.
Hold on. Different, not terrible, I don't think. To me, it's different because it's more like it's a combination of the narration, the dialogue, and the art to tell the story. Whereas now, you're supposed to just tell the story with the art, with the dialogue to support it. Whereas back then, it's like they would jump from locations, like all of a sudden he's in space, and it would say, later on in space, But I don't think that makes it worse. It just makes it different. And I also got to say that even though this is probably geared more towards children, because it was being read by so many people, I think it's actually a more relevant artifact of the pop culture of the time than a Batman comic from today is, because these are so off the radar. The new ones are so off the radar that they're sort of, even though they're more realistic, they're not as relevant to me.
The thing is, like, when you read the books now, like anything written in the last 25 years or 30 years, if it's not dark and it's not more like, I don't want to say risque or whatever, like made more borderline adult versus teenager, then the book sucks, right? Because like whoever can get it to that point where it's really dark and mysterious and there's a lot of blood.
To suck, you mean?
No, like, yeah, then it's like, oh man, that book was so good because like, it really changed the way we looked at it.
I think even adults had excitement about rocket travel. So, the rockets, the shape of rockets was in bras, was in cars, so people really believed that the world was changing for the better. So there's that naivete or that belief in progress, and that may seem childish by today's standards, but I don't think it was just for children.
And a lot of these stories, not just the Planet X one, but there's a lot of that feeling. Any one of, when you're talking about that dark new aspect that, the younger reader wants to see the gritty and the punch and the blood and all that, you take any panel from any one of these issues and you stencil that on a t-shirt. This ironic, bummed out, way too privileged moron teenager is going to wear it and love it and be cool. Culturally speaking, it's just a great glimpse into that world of what people want it to be.
Where the world was full of wonder.
I thought it was Leave It to Beaver in tights. That's what I thought it was.
Well,
really.
what about the one we didn't mention? My favorite story was Am I Really Batman? Batman wakes up in jail and no one believes that he's Batman, and then he goes to Wayne Manor and there's no Batcave and no one remembers who he is. And to me, again, the anxiety, right? It's almost like a nightmare, like no one remembers who I am.
Didn't he end up being high?
No. It ends up being I can't give away the ending, but again...
Was he hallucinating again?
There's so many Twilight Zone episodes that are like that, right?
If we had to rate this out of 5 suns, 5 good,
3
0
full
bad.
sunrises and a sunset. 3.
What is that? Is that 3.5?
That's very poetic.
As someone who wishes they could do this type of art and struggles often to try to get those simple lines. It's like a Six Sons. Like, it's beautiful. It's
Judge again, 0 Sons.
Oh.
Worst.
Okay, so I give it 4.5.
whoa.
I'm gonna bring the averages down and give it a solid 2.5.
2.5, eh?
Because you know what? I just don't think it translates. I don't think it holds. I don't think it holds the test of time. And I love Twilight Zone. And if you watch the old Twilight Zones and you watch them now, they still kind of freak you out. This is just. It had its time. It had its day. It's great if you're into the nostalgia and all that. It's great, but not what I'm into. So on that note, we're gonna go to break and come right back, and maybe we'll talk about Batman some more.
Awesome.
Some other.
Yeah!